the MS Michigan Man 64 podcast. My name is Brian Wallace, and I am the MS Michigan Man 64. The MS Michigan Man 64 podcast is about chronic disease awareness. I have had multiple sclerosis for the last 27 years. It's an invisible chronic disease that I've been battling for half of my life. I want to share with you what it is like living with the chronic disease from my experiences and the experiences of other chronic disease warriors. We can fight to have a voice to those that want to listen. Together, we can motivate and educate. Hi, and welcome to the MS Michigan Man 64 podcast. Today, I am sitting down with an MS warrior from the state of Utah. Nelle has a daughter that was diagnosed autistic 16 years ago, and she was fighting that fight, raising an autistic child. And I wanted to have her on in regards to autism awareness, and it's the end of MS Awareness Month. And I want to kind of transition it into the next month. And she got diagnosed with MS in 2022. So now she herself has her own diagnosis of multiple sclerosis, and she has a 16-year-old daughter on the autism spectrum. Please welcome to the podcast, Nelle. How are you doing today, Nelle?
I'm good. How are you?
I am doing okay. So Nelle, man, you got a lot of stuff going on in your life with an autistic child. I can relate to that a little bit. My stepdaughter is on the autism spectrum. She's on the high end. But can you kind of just take us through your journey with your diagnosis of multiple sclerosis in 2022 with having a child that you were raising on the autism spectrum?
Sure, absolutely. So yeah, I do have a daughter on the spectrum. She's a high support needs daughter. So not really very verbal, doesn't know danger, will always need someone to look out for her. She'll always need to live with her dad or I, or have some sort of support. So yeah, back in 2022, I woke up one morning, November 16th of 2022, with severe vertigo. And I couldn't really sit up or stand. I had to call in sick at work. I was working full time as an X-ray technician at a clinic for neurosurgeons. So I ended up going to the doctor later that day. They ruled out an ear infection. They ruled out a sinus infection or anything like that. They just thought it was some kind of fluke. They sent me home on some medication called meclizine, and then to try the Epley maneuver. The next day I woke up, still had vertigo, went to work, tried to push through it, ended up having to call my husband to come get me. Eventually I worked in a large medical office building. There was an ENT practice next door, and I had connections and was able to get in, and they checked me out, and they're like, we don't see anything wrong. And I said, well, I work for neurosurgeons. I know a little bit too much about health. Yeah. I said, can we just schedule a brain MRI? Because I was convinced I had like a tumor in my inner ear or something weird. Well, come to find out that brain MRI showed that I have multiple lesions in my brain. But also after that vertigo, I started losing the left side of my body to function properly. So I was trying to work through it with a cane or a wheelchair, taking x-rays of patients and just being stoic and trying to get through it.
Wow.
And then within a month of that vertigo symptom, I was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis.
Wow.
After I had more imaging of my spine and then eventually the spinal tap.
So let me ask you this. Did you have any kind of symptoms prior to that diagnosis in 2022 that you connected the dots backwards and said, you know what, that might have been MS that just didn't, because I'm hearing that so much more with people I'm talking to that after their diagnosis, they're like, you know what, that might have been MS and I didn't even realize it. Did you experience anything like that?
I did. Once I kind of researched all these symptoms of multiple sclerosis and talked with other MS warriors.
Hmm.
I did like a research back of the years prior, and one of the big symptoms I noticed was fatigue. Like there'd be some days I'd come home from work and just sit in my chair and sit there all night long. Like I couldn't do dinner, I couldn't hardly take care of my daughter. Luckily, my husband or my kids stepped in to help. Another thing I noticed is I lost my vocal range singing and then being able to project my voice, like for my patients
Oh,
in the x-ray room. And so I thought that was kind of weird. And then the month before I got the vertigo, I had like a migraine headache that started and it never really went away.
mm.
So that was another thing as well that I noticed. I'm like, yeah, that was most likely MS showing up.
So let me ask you this. I know, like, just me getting diagnosed. I didn't have kids yet, and you already have a family going. And when you're diagnosed, I know that you're dealing with everything else that's on your plate with your daughter. It's being her support with autism, and I know what kind of a job that is alone for a mom. How did you handle that diagnosis yourself mentally? Like, I mean, I have no idea what would be going through your head when that doctor said, yeah, you have MS.
I was pissed
Yeah.
because I felt like in my life, my plate is completely full and overwhelming.
Yeah.
And now to add this major, autoimmune disorder, that can completely change your lifestyle, completely change your quality of life. I was pissed. I was like,
Yeah.
why am I getting this now? I was mad at God, and I am a religious person.
Hmm.
Um, so I was, yeah, anger. Anger was my first, I guess,
Emotion.
really deep emotional outburst was anger. And then I kind of calmed down. And with my background of being an x-ray technician and being immersed in the medical field for 17 plus years, I
Mm.
had a good knowledge and good research. Plus, I was surrounded by not only my very supportive family, but also the doctors that I worked for. The neurosurgeons were very empathetic and can answer any questions for me. And they're the reason why I actually got diagnosed within a month of my first symptoms,
Yeah.
because they had connections and were able to get me to the right doctors and believe me in my symptoms. And I know a lot of MS warriors struggle with getting a diagnosis for months or years
Yeah.
because they're totally experiencing like medical gaslighting and they're blaming their
Yeah.
symptoms. The doctors are blaming their symptoms on like anxiety or depression, or you're just stressed,
And
or
I hear
you're
that.
not really listening.
I hear that so many times that people that get diagnosed and they're like, for 5, 10 years that they're getting told it's stress, anxiety, it's in your head,
Yeah.
it's a pinched nerve. It's just, and hey, kudos to you for having that connection, because anybody in their right mind would have used their connections of who they work for, being a neurologist,
Yeah.
X-ray tech, and thank God they got you in early, and it wasn't that long of a drawn out process for you, because I know that's a
Yeah.
drain on your mental health too.
Oh, absolutely. Because you're questioning what the heck's wrong with me? Is it this? Is it that?
Yeah,
I think one of the worst things you can do is hit up WebMD and decide that that's what your diagnosis is.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I think that just causes more anxiety
Yeah,
for a
absolutely.
person.
Funny story, when I got diagnosed, there was no internet, so I didn't have that temptation of doing that WebMD stuff. So it was kind of just a live and
Yeah.
learn thing. But then when the internet did start getting popular, and I'm searching, I've already had it for 5, 10 years, and I'm like searching stuff, and just some of the stuff that they were saying about MS, I'm like, why are they telling people that? That's just so inaccurate.
Exactly. Yeah.
So yeah, it's kind of scary what you read on the internet. So let me ask you this: you said you were working as a lab X-ray tech for a neurologist, and you said that you're not working anymore. I mean, MS took your
Right.
career away. Can you just
Yeah.
talk about that? Because I know that's a mental strain too. I had a 20-year career with the state of Ohio that MS took away, and that is just so
Mhm.
hard on your mental health. Having to give up a career like that.
Oh, absolutely. It's basically ripping a part of your identity away from you, and
Yeah.
you don't know who you are anymore. I worked as an x-ray technician through many different clinics for 17 years. And then before that, I was a medical assistant. So, I mean, that was a huge chunk of my identity because I worked full time. I loved what I was doing. I'd help patients out. I was good at it.
Yeah.
The doctors appreciated me, the patients and the staff. So to have MS come in and kind of put that out and make me not be able to do what I love,
Yeah.
it was depressing. It was hard. And I still struggle. Like, 6 months ago or so, my husband was going through and cleaning out our closet and he came to my huge pile of medical scrubs that I'd wear.
Mm.
And he's like, "Do you need these anymore?" And I'm like, "No."
Mm.
And I was really upset for like the next week because I'm like, yeah, that's a chapter of my life that I've had to close now.
Yeah.
It's depressing and it makes you reevaluate, okay, who am I now as a person?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I went through that same period when I stopped working. I mean, I didn't need to wear the same kind of clothes. I wore a lot of polo shirts, and I mean, I'm not going to wear those every day. And it's tough getting rid of stuff that just gives you those memories of when you were healthy. How did you handle that transition into like not being able to work with your mental health? Did you just do it on your own, or did you seek counseling?
No. The neurologist that I see now suggested that not only do I talk to my family practice doctor about antidepressants, which I was already on anyway, raising an autistic child because of situational depression,
Right.
but she also suggested going and talking to someone. So I did go to therapy and they did kind of help me reevaluate my identity and self-esteem and know that not my worth, all of my worth is not in the job that I hold, but in the person that I am as a mother, as a wife,
Yeah.
as someone on TikTok in the MS community, which the MS community on TikTok was huge in helping me. So supportive and so loving, such awesome people I met.
Yeah.
And that I got lucky that I found TikTok right after my MS diagnosis. I've heard a lot of people who've had MS for a while and didn't have any type of community or support like that.
Right.
And the MS community on TikTok is just absolutely amazing.
It is.
So that definitely helped me.
That community is one of the big reasons that I started this podcast is when I started connecting with people on there, when I got on there about a year and a half ago. It's just there's just so many people that just want a voice and just want people to hear their story. And, my daughter helped me come up with this idea for the podcast. And I'm just like, this is awesome. I love talking to people, number one, and I love talking about MS, and I love hearing people's stories because I think it's so important to hear other stories because my MS is not going to be like your MS, and the way that you handle it is not going to be the way that I handle it, but I could use pieces of yours and you can use pieces of mine to make it custom fit for you, and that's why I just love talking to people.
Exactly. Well, and the thing is you're able to ask them symptoms, like, have you had these symptoms? Or they can help you navigate going through doctor's offices and appointments and MRIs, just little things that a doctor can't really tell you. Only a patient can because they've experienced it firsthand.
Yeah.
So it's very valuable.
Oh, I absolutely 100%. So let's talk about your family a little bit, Nellie, because I know you said you're married and you got kids and all that, and just how did they accept the MS diagnosis, support wise and understanding wise? Because I mean, I know that when I got diagnosed, I wasn't even married yet. I was engaged, and I know that's a hard thing for the spouse too, to hear those words MS, and your husband's already dealing with an autistic daughter, and now he's getting hit with, okay, now my wife has MS. So I mean, just tell me how that all went with you.
Yeah, it hit my husband and of course my older two children who understand like a ton of bricks. My husband, it made him so sad and devastated, but then he was very supportive and he would always research things to try and make me more comfortable. Like he got me like a hydrogen water bottle. He got me all these vitamins and things that I needed that my neurologist suggested. he went out and got me like a grounding blanket. He was supportive with me choosing a new neurologist. Because when I was first diagnosed, I was like, I was reading up on the different DMTs and medications, to slow down the progression
Hmm.
and reading up those side effects. And that always freaks anyone out. And I'm like, I'm not going to do this.
Right.
I'm going to try and treat it holistically. And my
Yeah.
husband just kind of sat back and let me kind of digest that through. But he always knew I should be on DMT. And so finally, when the time came, and I realized that I can't treat this holistically.
Mhm.
He was very supportive about helping me find a good neurologist and finding a DMT. And he even, would want to come with me to my infusion appointments and
Oh, wow.
stuff like that. So he's been great.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's
And then
awesome.
my children, like on bad days, they would clean the house for me or just support me or just my son will always come upstairs and check on me, see how my day was, because he knows just from the experience of living with me and just from what I have said to him that MS changes minute to minute, day to day, week to week. Like you could have one great minute and then the next minute you feel like crap,
Right. Yeah.
So
Right.
he's always coming up and being like, hey, how was your day today?
That is just so
That
awesome
was great.
because it's just so awesome to have a spouse that's just so supportive like that. Because I just hear so many horror stories of people getting up and
Yeah.
walking away from them after their diagnosis, and I just know that he's
Yeah.
got a lot on his plate. So I give him a salute for just sticking by your
Yeah.
side. It's
Well,
just awesome.
and I just try and make sure I just let him know how much I appreciate him and love him because he provides for this family. He's the protector of this family and he's got a huge weight on his shoulders. And
Sure.
we've been through, you wouldn't believe what we've been through with Erin, our special needs daughter. There was a time in our marriage where we were separated and,
Yeah.
because it drains you because you don't put your relationship first as a married couple. You put all your energy and effort into your daughter who
Yeah.
needs help. And
Right.
trying to make her world easier. And then you got to pay attention to your other two children because you feel guilty that you're neglecting them
Yeah.
because all the attention's going towards Aaron. So we've kind of been through a tough battle like that. So I think when my MS diagnosis came around, he was better prepared
Yeah.
to handle another like stressful situation
Yeah. Wow.
because of our experience with Aaron. So
I
kind of a blessing in disguise, but still like it's still not
yeah.
fair.
Yeah, yeah. And you kind of got to look for the blessings, I guess, and everything that happens to you. But it's just such an amazing story, though, that you guys have made it through all of that, and
Yeah.
16 years with an autistic child and getting separated
Yeah.
now back together. I mean, that's just an awesome story. And
Well,
that
thank you.
support is so important for us. I know that because my wife is, she's very similar to you of having a child on the autism spectrum. And,
Mhm.
and she went through a divorce because of that, because her ex-husband didn't understand it. And that kind of drove a wedge in between them. And she went through that divorce. So I totally, totally respect that
Yeah.
you guys are making it work. That's just so awesome.
Yeah. It's not easy. And we take credit. I mean, we love God and we have a relationship with Jesus Christ. And I think that's a big bonus in any relationship is if you have common ground with religion
Hmm.
or something of a external higher force field that can help you and have, I guess, more of a foundational meaning in life. I think that really helps
Yeah.
a lot of couples and families, in my opinion. So,
Oh, I,
yeah.
I, I agree with you. I mean, everybody's different and they have their own opinions, but
Yeah.
yeah, I agree with you. There has to be a common ground. And like
Yeah.
for me and my wife, she related to my diagnosis of MS. Cause she didn't, when, I was healthy, my whole life. And, I had MS 27 years old and then I met her at 45 years old and she didn't know me healthy. So
Yeah.
she accepted my disease right off the rip, and I think a lot of it was because of her having a child on the autism spectrum. So
Absolutely.
she understood the disability, and that connection is just so important. I totally agree with you on that.
Yeah. Yep. It's so true. And with Aaron being on the autism spectrum, my other two children, Julia and Will, because of living with a sister who has special needs, their view on life, they're so much more compassionate and patient with others and with strangers.
Hmm.
And I think having someone be disabled like that or special needs is a blessing for a family because it really kind of opens your eyes to other people
Yeah.
and their situation and their needs. I can just say, even having an autistic child is a huge blessing
Yeah.
in our family's life, along with my MS, because with me having MS, I don't work, but I'm home.
Hmm.
And I've been able to be home for my special needs daughter when I've had to get a call from her school and pick her up early from school from being sick, whereas normally I'd have to leave work and go and get her. And,
Yeah.
just I'm more accessible for my family, which I think is a huge blessing.
Yeah, absolutely. You took a bad thing and turned it into a good thing with, being there more for your daughter. I mean, I totally get that. That's so awesome. And it's kind of, I really appreciate, and I like talking about the autism thing because of my stepdaughter. I learned so much when I met my wife because I didn't know anything about autism. But I accepted when she told me she had a daughter on the spectrum. I was like, okay, that's fine. I'm ready to learn, and I just learned so many amazing things. Like everybody always thinks of autism as the severe autism, and my
Hmm.
stepdaughter is like the high functioning. And she's like on the brilliant, end of it. And it's just so fascinating that there's so much of a wide range on that
Yeah,
autism spectrum that I don't think people understand that part of autism.
right. Well, and you could parallel that with multiple sclerosis. I think there's a wide range
Hmm.
of MS diagnoses. I mean, you've got our RMS and SPMS and what is it?
Primary
PPMS,
progressive
primary
PPM.
progressive.
Yep. Yep.
So it's a huge spectrum, just like autism. Not one MS person looks the same as the other, just like an autistic individual doesn't look the same as another.
Exactly.
So
Exactly.
it's fascinating.
Yeah, it's just people just need to educate themselves on different conditions and not just think of them. When they think of MS, they think of somebody in a wheelchair because that's not everybody with
Exactly.
MS. I mean, there's people you walk by every day in a store. There's probably one or
Yep.
two that probably have an MS diagnosis. You don't even know it.
Yep.
Yeah.
Exactly. Or any other autoimmune disease or issue.
Hmm.
And just because they don't look sick doesn't mean they aren't.
Right.
So,
Yeah, absolutely. So what kind of a DNT did you and your husband, when you guys did all your research, what did you guys end up settling on, and how has it been doing for you?
I am on Tysabri, and the main thing is the first neurologist I went to that diagnosed me just shoved pamphlets in front of my face and said, choose a medication.
Mm,
And I originally was going to go with Ocrevus just because I liked the convenience of every 6 months
right.
of getting an infusion. But then I got a second opinion and went to another neurologist, and she did a full medical history on me. And I have a history of melanoma skin cancer. I've had it 3 times.
Okay.
And based on that, she suggested that I take Tysabri, which is my infusion that I get every 5 weeks now, because Tysabri has a decreased risk of me developing my melanoma skin cancer back. Um, and I did all the blood work, and I am positive for like PML, which is that brain
Right. Yeah.
disease
Yeah. Yeah.
that is risky, especially on Tysabri. But
Hmm.
the risk of getting PML versus melanoma is so much less
Yeah.
of a chance than me getting skin cancer again on Ocrevus. So that's what ultimately decided me to go on Tysabri.
That's just such an amazing explanation of why you chose that drug. Because I did an episode a few episodes back with Kristen, who was the U.S. Navy veteran that sang in Washington D.C., and she just had a bilateral mastectomy, and she was on Ocrevus, and she stopped taking Ocrevus, and then she just got diagnosed with breast cancer, and she had the mastectomy in
Mm.
February, and she thinks that it's because of the Ocrevus. So that is so interesting that you brought that point up with your research
Yeah.
of that. It's just very interesting that was the reason that you stayed away from the Ocrevus and went
Yes,
to the
absolutely.
Tysabri. Wow. That's just so important on how
Yeah,
you need to do your research on the meds that body.
absolutely. Or just 20 questions for your neurologist.
Yeah.
Luckily, my neurologist read a bunch of studies and she's like, oh no, you're not going on Ocrevus. So
Wow.
whereas the other neurologist was like, just pick one. And she knew I wrote down my medical history with the first neurologist, but
Wow.
she just overlooked it.
Yeah.
And it was
Wow.
very, very disappointing. So,
Yeah, I would have been disappointed in that too. And another thing to piggyback on the PML thing, I was on Tesabri for a while. I was on it for about 3 years, and
mhm.
just a funny, interesting story about PML. Tesabri was a new drug when I started taking it. So when I did the research on it and I seen PML, I didn't really understand what PML was. And
Yeah.
I was going through an episode, and my mental health wasn't real good at that time. And I called my doctor freaking out. I said to him, "Hey doc, I think I got PML, man. How do I know if I got it?" And he very calmly said to me, "Brian, if you had PML, we wouldn't be talking right now." And
Uh-huh.
I kind of like, I calmed down. I took a step back and I'm like, wait a minute, why am I worrying about this? I understand it's a mental thing, but I think that, like you said, the PML thing it's so out of the ordinary for those cases. And I mean, I never had any problem on that drug. I did very well on that drug.
Yeah.
For 3 years, I did really, really well on it.
Yeah. I love Tysabri. I have very few side effects. They do run me an extra bag of fluids just to help with like the day after migraine headache and kind of the itchiness that I get. And
Mm-hmm.
that helps a lot.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I'm very happy. I'll probably stay on Tysabri as long as,
Yeah, write
I
it out.
don't get
Yeah.
more like brain lesions or lesions anywhere. But yeah,
Yeah, you
I
write it
like
out.
it.
Write it out until it don't work anymore. I think
Yep.
but the longest DMT I made it on was Copaxone. I made it 15 years on
Okay.
that drug. I did really well on it. That was back when you couldn't even really tell I had MS. So, I mean, you get on
Yeah.
a DMT and it's working for you. You just got to stay vigilant on it and
Yeah.
keep on going. Do you do anything
Yep.
else like for like what kind of tools do you use? Do you like do a lot of exercise to keep your leg strength
I
go?
do. Yeah, I have a couple of dogs, so I try and take them on walks. I also have, this might be silly, I have a vibration plate that I stand on and it just kind of vibrates my whole body. And I truly think that circulating that blood is a
Oh,
big deal.
okay, wait, no,
So I do that.
I don't think that's silly, but you got to explain that a little bit more because I've never heard that one. A vibration plate.
Yeah, they're like all over TikTok. If you look up vibration plates, that's actually where I found it was TikTok
Oh,
shop. So you just stand on it and it just shakes you like crazy. And they say it's really good for like the lymphatic system, for any kind of swelling. And while I'm standing on it, I can do squats or lunges. It came with armbands, so I could even do like a little bit of a bicep curl.
wow.
And yeah, I've noticed that it's just like when I step off, it's like my thighs are bright red because the blood is rushed to it.
Hmm.
Other parts of my body, the skin looks red. I think it's just really good to just circulate the
Circulation.
blood in your body.
Oh yeah, that's
Like even if I don't have the energy to go for a walk for the day, I can at least stand on that plate for 5 to 10 minutes
yeah.
and I feel like I've done something.
Wow,
So
that's really cool. I'd never seen that. I'm gonna have to check that out. That is so cool.
yeah.
Are there any other kind of tools that you use for your mental health or anything? I play a stupid video game just for my mental health. It's a golf game. Do you use
Yeah.
anything for your mind?
Yeah, actually, I have a word search book and a crossword puzzle book. And then I love to play card games. And then on TikTok, with my TikTok MS friends, we actually play Mario Kart with our Nintendo Switches and Uno. And so
Oh,
that's like being social. And then you're also just playing games. It's good for eye and hand coordination.
yeah,
So I kind of do that. And then, yeah, my husband and I, he does weightlifting. And then he just bought an inversion table where you hang upside down.
yeah, yeah,
And I think that helps because it's anti-gravity for your spine for a moment.
yeah.
So kind of using that. And then, of course, taking supplements and trying to drink water and eat the best you can. But then I'm an emotional eater and I'll like pig out on like sugar and comfort foods every now and then. So
I've talked to so many people that try to watch, do certain diets and all that, and I've just never had the discipline to do it because I'm a football player and I was an offensive lineman and I always liked to eat and I'm never going to be able to change that.
Yeah.
But I do try to, I used to drink a lot more than I do now. Now I'm just a very, very social drinker and have one drink. I mean, I just think that we make the adjustments as we go, for me, it was like, okay, this doesn't work anymore in my life. I got to get rid of it. And that's just kind of the way that I've lived my life.
Yeah. Yep. Exactly.
Nellie,
so yeah, I try and eat healthier than I used to for sure. But
yeah, absolutely, Nellie. I do the same thing, and I try to get as much exercise as I can, even though I'm not as mobile as I can. I still I don't let MS stop me. I go up to the Lake Erie. We got a little place up there, and I still go out fishing. I'm like. And people are like, how do you get on the boat? I'm like, I don't know. I just figure it out. I got people that'll help me. I'm not going to let MS control me. I'm still going to do what I enjoy doing. I'm going to figure it out and do it.
Yeah, that's me. In fact, since I've had MS, I actually cashed in my retirement and I traveled to Europe a couple times just by myself.
That's awesome.
And met up with a tour group and I take my cane and my medications. And if I have a bad day, I just tell my tour guide, hey, I need to hang out at the hotel for the day. And I've done that. But just getting out there and traveling and having the courage to do it with MS, I think is so therapeutic. And then it's kind of filling in the gap of losing that identity as an x-ray technician, because now I can travel and explore new places and try new foods and meet new people. And so
yeah,
that's kind of my new identity.
And that's what we do. Because I never would have guessed that I would have been sitting here doing a podcast with you 20 years ago, early in my disease. But this is my therapy. Just sitting here talking with people and hearing their stories, and I love it. And that's what we have to do as a chronic disease person. You can't quit. You just got to figure it out. You can still do things. You just might have to do them a little bit different.
Yep, absolutely. I totally agree.
Hey, Nellie, I really want to thank you for coming on the show and just talking with me about autism and multiple sclerosis. Is there anything else that you want to tell to anybody that's listening, just to spread awareness about autism and MS?
Yeah. In fact, I love the month of March because it's Multiple Sclerosis Awareness Month. And then April is Autism Awareness Month.
Mm-hmm.
So I would just say, because they're both disorders that are on a huge spectrum, just be mindful of people in public. They may look healthy and normal, but underneath it, they could have an autoimmune disease, or they could be on the autism spectrum. And if you yourself is affected by one of those, I would just say do the best you can to advocate for yourself. Don't ever stop fighting. If you go into a doctor's office and they tell you one thing and it just doesn't sit right in your gut, go and get a second opinion. Talk about it with another peer that may have that same diagnosis as you. Just figure it out. Don't settle for what one person tells you to do. Just keep figuring it out and do what's best for you and your family. And then don't be so hard on yourself. If one day you can't get out of bed, or one day your child's driving you nuts and you need to go drop them off somewhere, don't feel guilty about it, because your self-preservation is so important, not only for your special needs child, but for yourself as well. And that's just kind of what I would suggest anyone that's going through that. So
I love it, Nell. I love it. I appreciate you so much. That was just so beautiful, so beautifully said. And I really appreciate you coming on and sharing your story with me. And just let your husband know that I appreciate him too, because I know he's got a hell of a battle on his hands too. And I appreciate his fight.
You gotta love your support system. You gotta love him and appreciate him, and let him know how much we mean to you. So yeah. Thank you.
Absolutely. All right, this is the MS Michigan Man. I'm going to get out of here. Don't forget, you can follow me on Instagram, MS Michigan Man 64. You can also find me on TikTok, MS Michigan Man 64. And you can follow me on Facebook, Brian Wallace, out of Brunswick, Ohio. Until the next episode, the MS Michigan Man, Brian, I am out.